Video number 10 from me, Matthew, probably better known as Karen Moon to many of you. This is going to be a very different video because this video is about how I came to Japan, and I'm mainly making it for you if you are someone I haven't been in contact with for a long time. Lots of school friends have got in contact with me recently after we've sort of lost contact for 20 years or whatever. So, how I came to Japan and why I'm in Japan. This will probably be a two-part one, but let's just get started. So, after about 2 years of university, so I studied mathematics at university in Birmingham, and it very quickly became apparent that basically nobody on the course was interested in mathematics. There were probably 150 students in my year, and they didn't have any interest or knowledge about mathematics, which is quite strange. They basically wanted to work in the financial industry. Most of them wanted to do jobs in banking and accounting and that kind of thing, which is fine, obviously, but it's not what I was at university for. Mathematics is very special. It's poorly understood. It's poorly described. Mathematics is not a language. Certainly not like a language to describe the world or anything like that. It is. It's a glimpse into the underlying structure of everything, of the universe in particular. So it's not like a description of what we see. It's far more accurate to say that the universe is a description or a manifestation of mathematics, of mathematical laws, and we're discovering these laws, and a lot of amazing stuff happens from that. And interestingly, with the mathematics, the most theoretical abstract mathematics tends to again and again have the most practical applications. The most famous example of this would be logic. Logic was a branch of mathematics that was abstract, esoteric, theoretical, of no interest to anyone except for a few people, the logicians, I believe they're called logisticians. But of course, I wouldn't be talking to you now through this medium without logic, because all modern communication is based on logical circuits and switching. Computers are based on logical circuits and switching. The telephone network is based on logical circuits and switching. So, logic that sort of started as things like A implies B, A is true, therefore B is true, those have been massively practical. So I left university after a couple of years, and I spent a very relaxing year basically living as a student but not being a student, which was good. And I had cable TV, so I watched lots of very good documentaries, and I spent a long time walking around in Birmingham where I was living. And then I moved to Japan. So that would have been end of 2001, and I stayed in Japan for a year and a half, studying Japanese martial arts and learning a bit of Japanese, and just enjoying it a lot. I'd always been interested in Japan, partly from watching Japanese films. In 1998, I guess, I watched the Japanese films Hanabi and I think Sonatine, which are both directed by Takeshi Kitano. And also, many years before that, I'd seen the film Tanpopo, which is about a woman who runs a ramen shop, like a noodle soup shop. So I'd always been interested in Japan, and when I was growing up as a kid, we often had Japanese people living in our house, homestay students. So I was always fascinated by the culture. And at the age of 15, I was fortunate enough to meet someone called Paul Harper, who taught me Japanese martial arts. So it was very natural to come to Japan, and when I arrived, I knew instantly it was somewhere I wanted to spend a lot of time and possibly live forever, because it's a remarkable country. I really urge you to come and visit here. It's every country in the world is unique. Obviously, the Japanese make a lot of fuss about thinking their country is more unique than others. It's not, but it is a wonderful country. The people here are amazing. The country is, let's say, 5 to 10 years ahead of any other developed country, really, probably with the exception of South Korea, in terms of living standard. So many aspects of Japanese daily living are 10, 20, 30 years ahead of countries like the UK, where I'm from, or the US. There's a lot of infrastructure here, communications infrastructure, transport infrastructure, that makes life very convenient, comfortable, and is very enriching, because you can just jump on a train and a couple of hours later, you can go from Tokyo to Kyoto in 2 hours, which in most countries by train you'd be looking at maybe 5 or 6 hours. So that kind of thing makes a big difference. The communications infrastructure, the fact that we have high-speed fibre optic internet to most houses, and it's very, very affordable. Cost of living here is actually a lot lower than is made out by the Western media. Since the early 1990s, the media in the West has been very biased against Japan, particularly talking about cost of living and economic things. Japan is really the future, and it's a good future, and other countries, hopefully European countries for example, will become more like Japan, economically at least, in terms of not being based on boom and bust economics, not being obsessed by this idea of year-on-year growth. In Japan, some businesses have business plans that are last several generations. They're planning 30, 40 years ahead, which is incredible, and which is why some of those Japanese companies are still so incredibly strong. Japan has very, very high employment. That's a very good thing. Unemployment is a very, very bad thing, and many countries just still don't get this. They just do not understand that, particularly for men, unemployment is a very bad thing. Lots of social consequences happen when you have men from sort of the mid 20s to let's say mid 40s unemployed. That causes a lot of problems. The employment among women is actually quite high now in Japan as well. They're not great jobs. They are, for both men and women here, they're often service jobs. The pay is not amazing, but you can live on it, and that has a lot of knock-on consequences. Japan has the best health system in the world, which is one of the reasons I'm here. Japan actually spends less money on health as a percentage than countries like the US and the UK, but the quality of healthcare here is much higher because it's much more regulated. The companies, the drug companies, the companies making the medical machines, like the different scanning machines, for example, the prices are very, very highly regulated. They can't just charge what they like. The prices are set by the government and actually by a panel of doctors. So that's what brought me to Japan, really. And then I stayed here for about a year and a half, and I went back to England. While I was in Japan, I taught myself IT. So I studied a lot about computers. There were only a handful of books in the local library in English about computers. I read them and reread them. I happened to pick up a magazine called 2600. I actually have a recent issue somewhere here, which I shall show you. This is 2600 magazine. I picked up an issue in Tower Records in Tokyo, and I understood about 5% of it. And I went to the library, read some books. Broadband was just starting at that time in Japan, so I got broadband internet, and I studied as much as I could, and then later I could understand sort of 95% of those kind of magazines. So that's what got me into IT, which meant that when I went back to England I could get a job as an IT instructor, which I enjoyed a lot, teaching people often who were doing a career change, so people who had been made unemployed and now wanted to go into IT. I was teaching them IT skills and helping them to pass their IT exams. But after a while I missed Japan too much. So after a few years I came back to Japan, which I think was about 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago. And I've lived in Japan ever since. And it's just a country that suits me very well. It's a country I feel very comfortable in. The living here is good. It's one of the safest countries in the world. The living here is very smooth. There's no friction. People are very calm and quiet, which suits my character. There's no confrontation in Japan. There's no aggravation. You don't hear cars hooting all the time. You don't hear people arguing in the street. You don't hear shouting. It's just a quiet, calm country with a very high standard of living, and suits me very well. And I would say, if you're living somewhere that doesn't suit you, then it's a lot easier to move than you think. And if it goes wrong, you can always move back. So I'm going to end this video here, and there'll be another one about how I've spent the past 10 years in Japan, I guess. So please do go to my funding website, which is www.matthewdons.org. That's Matthew with 2 T's. It's MATTHEW, D for Delta, O for Oscar, N for November, S for Sierra.org. I desperately need funds for cancer treatment, so if you can make a donation, that's very helpful. But please go and take a look at the site, because there's updates and things there. And please leave a comment on this video. Your comments mean so much to me, and it's the only way I know people are actually watching the videos, but your comments really do mean a great deal. Thank you ever so much for listening, and I hope you're having a good day or night wherever you are.